I never meant to hear what I heard. I only wanted to surprise my son. But the moment my best friend slid into the passenger seat and started talking, my heart split open like glass under a hammer. What she said about me, about the mother who raised him, sacrificed for him, was something I could never have imagined. My name is Margaret Ellison, and I am 56 years old. For most of my life, I was a nurse in a small hospital outside Cincinnati, Ohio. My late husband, Robert, was a machinist who died far too young, leaving me to raise our only child, Daniel, alone. Every paycheck I earned, every holiday I skipped, every tired bone in my body was spent for one thing: to give Daniel a better life than mine. And I thought I had succeeded. He grew into a fine man, with a steady job in finance, a beautiful wife named Jessica, and now, a life of his own. That Saturday, I spotted his silver sedan parked outside the diner on Maple Street. It was the same diner Robert used to take me when we were dating. I thought it would be fun, like the old days, to sneak into the back seat and surprise Daniel when he returned. Just a harmless little joke between mother and son. But when the doors opened, it wasn't Daniel who stepped inside first. It was Clara, my best friend of 30 years. Clara, who had been there through my widowhood, through every lonely Christmas, through nights when I cried myself to sleep. And then Daniel followed, sliding behind the wheel. They didn't see me, curled up in the shadows of the back seat. The first thing Clara said, without hesitation, was, "Daniel, your mother is becoming a burden. You can't let her keep living off you like this. She's holding you back." I froze. My chest tightened. A burden? After everything? Daniel's reply was even worse. "Don't worry, Clara. I have a plan for her. By next month, she won't be in our way anymore." I gripped the leather seat, my breath caught in my throat. A plan? What kind of plan? The car started moving, but inside me, everything stood still. What was my son planning to do with me? I wasn't always the kind of woman people could call a burden. Once upon a time, I was the strongest person I knew. At 24, I married Robert, my high school sweetheart. He was quiet, steady, with grease-stained hands and a laugh that could ease my worst days. We dreamed of raising kids on a patch of land outside Cincinnati, maybe even a small farm, but life had other plans. By 34, I was standing in a black dress beside a cheap coffin, clutching Daniel's little hand. Robert had died of a sudden heart attack at only 39. The world turned cold that day, and I swore on my husband's grave I would raise our boy alone, no matter what it cost me. To keep us afloat, I took every shift I could get at Riverside General Hospital. Nights, weekends, even holidays. I was always there, standing by beeping machines, comforting strangers while my son slept alone at home. I missed birthdays. I missed soccer games. I missed the nights when Daniel came home with a scraped knee and only found an empty kitchen. But every paycheck went straight into his future. I didn't buy myself new clothes. I didn't go on trips. My one luxury was a second-hand bookshelf where I stacked Daniel's school trophies and drawings, proof that my sacrifices weren't for nothing. That's when Clara entered my life. She was another nurse at the hospital, fiery and sharp-tongued, the kind of woman who always knew the latest gossip and wasn't afraid to say what everyone else was thinking. When Robert died, Clara stepped in like a sister. She watched Daniel when I couldn't. She brought casseroles on long shifts. She even stood in the bleachers at his basketball games, cheering when I wasn't there. For years, I believed Clara was my rock, the one person who understood the weight on my shoulders. We shared secrets over cold coffee in the break room. I trusted her with my son, my grief, my life. Daniel adored her too. Aunt Clara, he called her, even though we weren't blood. I told myself it was good, healthy, for him to have another adult to lean on when I was gone. But sometimes, when I walked in after a 12-hour shift and found them laughing at the kitchen table, a strange ache twisted inside me. Like I was watching my place in his life being quietly replaced. I brushed it off as silly jealousy. Clara was helping us. She loved us. Why would I ever suspect otherwise? Still, Daniel and I had our own bond, forged in fire and loss. He was a bright boy, always with a book in hand. I remember sitting on the worn couch, my nurse's shoes still on, reading his school essays while he watched my face for approval. "Do you think I can make it to college, Mom?" he asked once, eyes wide with hope. I nearly cried. "Daniel," I said, "you can be anything. I'll make sure of it." And I did. I worked double shifts to send him to Ohio State University, skipping meals so he could have the books and clothes he needed. When he graduated with honors in finance, I felt Robert smiling down on us. That was supposed to be my happy ending. But happy endings are fragile things. After college, Daniel changed. He wore sharp suits, talked fast, and spent more time in the city than at home. He met Jessica, a polished woman from a wealthy family. At first, I was thrilled. Finally, he had someone to share his life with. But Jessica never warmed to me. Her eyes lingered on my thrift store dresses, my small rented house, the way I carried my lunch in reused grocery bags. Once, I overheard her say to Daniel, "Your mother clings to you too much. You'll never move forward if she's always around." Those words stung, but I pushed them aside. Surely, my son would never think that way. Surely, he remembered everything I gave up for him. Clara, however, didn't help matters. Somewhere along the way, she and Jessica grew close. I would see them whispering at family gatherings, exchanging glances I couldn't decode. At first, I thought it was just women bonding. But slowly, Clara's visits to me became less frequent, her laughter a little colder. She stopped asking me how I was. Instead, she praised Jessica, telling me how sophisticated she was, how lucky Daniel was to have her. I told myself not to be petty, not to doubt the woman who once held me while I cried over Robert's death. But the distance grew. Now, sitting in that car, hidden in the shadows, I remembered every sacrifice, every lonely night, every meal I skipped, every birthday I missed. And I remembered how Clara once told me, long ago, "Don't worry, Margaret. I'll always have your back." Yet here she was, telling my son I was a burden. Betrayal doesn't always feel like fire. Sometimes, it feels like ice spreading through your veins, freezing you from the inside out. Daniel's words echoed louder than Clara's. By next month, she won't be in our way anymore. What did he mean? A nursing home? Cutting me off? Selling my house? The thoughts raced like knives through my head. My son, the boy I worked my hands raw for, was planning to push me aside. And Clara, the woman I trusted more than anyone, was helping him. I stared at the back of Daniel's head as he drove, my fingers trembling against the seat. The streetlights flashed across his face, and for the first time, I didn't see my little boy. I saw a stranger. A stranger with my son's voice, plotting against me. The air in the car grew heavy, choking me, but I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Couldn't reveal I was there. Because deep down, a part of me knew, if I showed myself now, whatever plan they had for me would only happen faster. And so, I stayed silent, hidden in the shadows, as my world shattered piece by piece. But that silence wouldn't last forever. Because if Daniel truly thought I was weak enough to be discarded, he didn't know his mother at all. The car kept rolling through the quiet streets of Cincinnati, headlights slicing through the September night. I crouched lower in the back seat, praying neither Daniel nor Clara would glance back. Every word they spoke felt like a dagger sliding deeper into my chest. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to hear this. But now that I had, I couldn't look at either of them the same way again. They thought I was blind, too naive to see the truth. But I wasn't blind. I was invisible. And that was worse. "Jessica's right," Clara said, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. "If you don't put your foot down now, Margaret will drain you dry. She'll never let go. Nursing homes exist for a reason, Daniel. And she wouldn't be the first mother to live there." My heart stopped. Nursing home. The words sat heavy in the air like poison. Clara knew my worst fear. I'd seen patients abandoned by their families in sterile hallways, their rooms filled with the smell of disinfectant and loneliness. They clung to nurses like me because no one else came. I swore that would never be me. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I know, Clara. I've already looked into one. It's not far from here. Good reputation, private rooms. Jessica says we'll have more freedom if she's settled in a place like that. And honestly, Mom's house? It's too small. Jessica wants to start looking at bigger places once we sell it. Sell my house. My stomach twisted. That tiny two-bedroom on Brookdale Avenue wasn't much, but it was the only thing I had left of Robert. We bought it together when Daniel was a toddler. Every creak in the floorboards carried a memory. Every nail in the walls held our lives. And now my son, the boy I bled and starved for, was planning to strip it away like it was nothing but real estate. I wanted to scream. I wanted to leap up and grab his shoulders and shout, asterisk, how dare you? How dare you take everything from me? Asterisk, but the words caught in my throat. If I revealed myself now, I would only give them power. They would know I was desperate, cornered. And they would move faster. I couldn't let that happen. Not yet. I had to play their game. Quiet. Observant. Waiting. The car finally pulled into the diner parking lot where Clara had left her own car. They said their goodbyes with a casualness that felt like betrayal's kiss on my cheek. Clara hugged him, patted his shoulder, and said, "You're doing the right thing. Don't let guilt stop you." Then she slipped into her car and drove away, not knowing I was watching her from the shadows like a ghost. Daniel drove off, humming faintly to himself, as if he hadn't just ripped his mother's heart into pieces. When he finally parked at his apartment complex, I waited until he went inside before I slipped out of the back seat. My legs were stiff, my hands shaking. I stood under the street lamp, the cool night air filling my lungs, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alone. Not just widowed. Not just aging. Alone in a world where even my own son saw me as disposable. On the walk home, memories came flooding back. Daniel as a boy, running into my arms after his first spelling bee win. Daniel crying into my shoulder the night Robert died. Daniel handing me his college diploma, whispering, "This is for you, Mom." Had it all been a lie? Or had something changed? I replayed every moment, every smile, every promise, and still couldn't understand how the same child could grow into this man. By the time I reached my little house on Brookdale Avenue, my sorrow had curdled into something stronger. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the peeling wallpaper, and whispered to myself, asterisk, if they think they can erase me, they don't know who I am. Asterisk, I wasn't ready to confront him yet. First, I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what Daniel and Clara, and Jessica, were planning. Only then could I decide how to fight back. The next morning, I started small. I called Daniel, acting cheerful, asking if he wanted to come by for dinner that weekend. His voice was polite but distant. "Sure, Mom. But Jessica and I might have other plans. I'll let you know." He didn't know I'd been in his car. He didn't know I'd heard everything. That was my advantage. For now, he still thought I was the same trusting, naive mother. And I would use that. As I hung up, I glanced around my house, at the photographs of Daniel and Robert, the shelves lined with Daniel's trophies. They thought they could put me away in some nursing home and take this from me. But this house wasn't just walls and floors. It was my battlefield. My story wasn't over. And if my son was planning a war, then he was about to learn. His mother had been fighting battles long before he was born. And this time, I wouldn't lose. The morning after that car ride, I woke up with a knot in my stomach that no coffee could untangle. Sunlight spilled through the curtains, warming the old oak table where Robert once read the Sunday paper, but the house didn't feel safe anymore. Every photo frame on the wall seemed to stare at me, asking why my son would do this. The woman in those pictures, me, smiling with a baby on her hip, had no idea what awaited her 30 years later. I touched the photo of Daniel in his graduation gown. "Why, Danny?" I whispered. "Why now?" I needed to know more. Daniel had mentioned a plan, but what did that mean? Was it really just a nursing home? Or was there something else? My instincts screamed it was bigger. I'd worked as a nurse for decades. I'd seen families circle like vultures over old relatives when money was involved. And though Daniel had a good job, Jessica came from wealth. They didn't need my house. Unless Jessica wanted it. Unless she was pulling the strings and Daniel was following. That week, I played the role of doting mother as carefully as a surgeon with a scalpel. I called Daniel twice, asking about his work. I dropped by his office with a homemade casserole. He smiled, hugged me, even said, "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." But behind those words, I could see it, the faint stiffness in his eyes, the calculation. He was lying. My son was lying to my face. And I had to pretend I didn't notice. So, I turned to Clara. If anyone could slip, it would be her. 30 years of friendship gave me enough leverage to probe without her realizing. I invited her over for coffee one Thursday morning, setting out the good china I hadn't touched since Robert died. She walked in with her usual perfume, sharp and floral, like she wanted the whole world to know she was there. "Well, isn't this cozy?" she said, glancing around my small kitchen like it was beneath her. We talked about old times, our shifts at the hospital, her daughter in Florida. But when I leaned closer and asked, "Do you ever worry about ending up in a home one day, Clara?" Her eyes flickered. Just a second. But enough. "Oh, Margaret," she said with a rehearsed laugh, "don't be silly. Homes aren't so bad." Not so bad. The same woman who once promised to grow old with me, side by side in rocking chairs, was now softening me for the very trap she'd set. I wanted to smash the china right there. Instead, I smiled, offered her another cup, and tucked her words away like ammunition. Clara was part of this. I just didn't know how deep. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my hallway, replaying their voices in the car. Asterisk, by next month, she won't be in our way anymore. Asterisk, that wasn't just about a nursing home. There was something urgent in Daniel's tone, like a deadline. My bills were modest, my savings small. What could possibly be worth rushing? Unless they weren't just after my house. Maybe my pension. My life insurance. I sat on the couch, head in my hands, realizing the truth. My son might have been planning to erase me not just from his life, but from this world. The next day, I acted. I went to the Hamilton County Clerk's office, pretending I was just running errands, and asked to see any property filings on Brookdale Avenue. My hands shook as the clerk flipped through records. Nothing yet. But if Daniel or Jessica were planning to sell, it would come soon. I thanked her, left, and walked the downtown streets with my heart pounding. This wasn't paranoia anymore. Something real was coming. And I wasn't going to sit still and wait to be shoved into some sterile room or worse, buried 6 feet under. At home, I began keeping a notebook. I wrote down every suspicious word, every glance, every phone call cut short when I walked into a room. It became my secret weapon, tucked beneath the loose floorboard in my bedroom. Robert used to say, "Write things down, Maggie. Paper never forgets." Now his advice was keeping me sane. But I needed more than notes. I needed ears where mine couldn't reach. So, with trembling hands, I dug through the junk drawer until I found Daniel's old tape recorder from high school. I bought fresh batteries, tested the crackling static, and smiled. Let them talk. This time, I would be listening. That weekend, Daniel came over with Jessica. She barely looked at me, her manicured nails tapping on her phone as she sat on my couch. I offered cookies, tried small talk, but she only sighed and muttered, "This place is quaint." Quaint. Like a dollhouse to be swept aside. Daniel put his arm around her, eyes flicking toward me with that same polite mask. I excused myself, went into the kitchen, and left the recorder running beneath the cushion. From the doorway, I heard her whisper, "When is this happening, Danny? I don't want to wait forever." His reply chilled me, "Soon. Just a few more weeks. Once the papers are signed, it's done." Papers. Signed. Done. I pressed a hand to my mouth to keep from gasping. They were moving faster than I thought. But they didn't know I was onto them. And that was my only shield. I retrieved the recorder after they left, rewinding until their voices filled the room again. Proof. I finally had proof. But the question was, proof of what? A nursing home transfer? A sale of my house? Or something worse? I didn't know yet. What I did know was that time was running out. And for the first time in years, I felt a fire rising in me. Not the fire of grief, not the fire of sacrifice, but the fire of survival. They thought they could silence me. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The recorder sat on my kitchen table, its tiny wheels still spinning, the faint hiss of static filling the silence. I replayed Daniel's words over and over. Asterisk, once the papers are signed, it's done. Asterisk, my pulse thudded in my ears. Papers. What kind of papers? Nursing home admission forms? Real estate contracts? Or something worse? I'd seen enough families in hospitals to know that papers often meant life insurance, power of attorney wills. My heart squeezed tight. Could my son, my own flesh and blood, be planning not just to take my home, but to take my life? I told myself I was being dramatic. Daniel wasn't a killer. He was my boy, the same child who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares. But the voice in the back of my mind whispered, asterisk, people change, Margaret. Greed changes them. Asterisk, I thought of Jessica, her restless eyes, her impatience. She didn't just want freedom from me, she wanted control. And Daniel, swept up in her world, might do anything to keep her happy. Even if it meant erasing me. That Sunday, I went to church for the first time in months. I didn't sit near the front. I slipped into the back pew, clutching my worn leather Bible like a shield. Pastor Raymond's voice echoed, beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. The words struck me hard. Wolves didn't always come with snarling teeth. Sometimes, they came in the form of a son's gentle smile, or a friend's warm hug. And by the time you recognized them, it was too late. Tears blurred the pages of my hymnal, but I didn't cry from despair. I cried from fury. If they thought I was weak, they were wrong. When I returned home, I made myself a plan. First, I needed evidence strong enough that no one could twist it. The recorder was a start, but a lawyer or police officer would laugh at a few whispered lines. Second, I needed allies. But who could I trust? Clara was lost to me. Jessica was the enemy. Daniel was a stranger in my son's skin. That left no one. Except maybe strangers. People with no stake in my downfall. So, I called the Hamilton Legal Aid Office, pretending I was just an old woman curious about her rights. They offered a free consultation for seniors. My hands trembled as I wrote down the appointment date. If Daniel thought he was the only one moving chess pieces, he was wrong. That week, I followed Daniel. Not obviously, just enough to know where he went after work. Twice, he drove to a sleek downtown building with mirrored windows. I waited in my old Buick across the street, watching him enter through glass doors etched with gold letters, Harrison and Wolf Law Firm. My stomach sank. That was no nursing home paperwork. That was estate law. Wills. Trusts. Power of attorney. He wasn't just planning to move me. He was planning to control everything I had. My house. My pension. Maybe even my medical choices. That night, I barely slept. The creaks of my old house sounded like whispers in the dark. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining Daniel in some lawyer's office, signing away my life. Did he forge my signature? Was Clara a witness? My mind spun with scenarios until dawn broke. And then, when the phone rang at 7 a.m., my heart nearly stopped. It was Daniel. His voice was smooth, casual. Hey Mom. Jessica and I were thinking. It's time we help you with your finances. We don't want you stressing about bills anymore. How about we sit down with a lawyer this week and go over things? Just to make sure you're protected. Protected. My blood ran cold. That was the word predators used before the trap snapped shut. I agreed, my voice steady though my insides quaked. Of course, Danny. That sounds thoughtful. He had no idea I already knew. When I hung up, I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles whitened. He thought I'd walk into his lawyer's office like a lamb to slaughter. But he was forgetting something. I wasn't just his mother. I was a nurse. I'd held dying men's hands, calmed screaming children, fought through nights when exhaustion nearly killed me. Survival wasn't new to me, it was my profession. And I was about to fight harder than ever. 2 days later, I kept my appointment at the legal aid office. A young lawyer named Evelyn Brooks sat across from me, her eyes sharp behind square glasses. I spilled everything, the recorder, the whispers, the suspicion. She listened without interruption, then leaned forward. Mrs. Ellison, if what you're saying is true, Your son may be preparing to file for guardianship over you. That would give him legal control of your assets, your medical decisions, even your home. He could place you in a facility against your will. My stomach flipped. Guardianship. It was worse than I imagined. Evelyn placed her hand gently over mine. But if you're of sound mind, which you clearly are, you can fight this. The key is evidence. We'll need more than whispers. I left her office clutching a folder of pamphlets about elder abuse and guardianship law. Elder abuse. The words tasted bitter, but they fit. That's what this was. Not just betrayal. Abuse. I thought of all the patients I'd comforted, the old men and women abandoned by families who wanted their pensions more than their presence. And now I was one of them. But not for long. I had fire in my veins. Evelyn promised to help me file a protective petition, but first I needed proof, solid proof, of what Daniel and Clara were planning. That meant I had to play along. Go to his lawyer. Smile. Nod. Pretend I was too simple, too trusting. Let them underestimate me. The next day, Daniel called again. Mom, we've set up a meeting for Friday with Harrison and Wolf. Clara's going to come too. Just to make things easier. My throat tightened at her name. Clara, the woman who once promised to hold my hand in the nursing home if we ever ended up there together, was now a co-conspirator in my downfall. That sounds lovely, I lied. When I hung up, I pressed my palms against the kitchen counter to steady myself. Friday. That was the deadline. By then, I had to be ready. Because once those papers were signed, my life as I knew it would vanish. And I refused to vanish quietly. Friday arrived with gray skies, the kind that hang low and heavy, pressing down on your chest. I dressed carefully, nothing too sharp, nothing too shabby. Just my old navy dress, the one Robert used to say made my eyes look like calm water. I pinned my hair up, slipped on sensible shoes, and stood before the mirror. I didn't look like a woman about to lose her freedom. I looked like a mother going to support her son. That was exactly the image I wanted. They expected vulnerability. They would get composure. Daniel picked me up at noon, his silver sedan gleaming. Jessica sat in the front seat, her perfume so sharp it stung my throat. She didn't turn when I climbed in the back. You look nice, Mom, Daniel said, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. His smile was thin, brittle. I forced my lips into one of my own. Thank you, Danny. It's important to look your best for important things, isn't it? Jessica smirked at that, as if I'd confirmed I had no idea what was coming. If only she knew. The law firm building towered above us, its mirrored windows swallowing the overcast sky. Inside, the marble lobby gleamed cold and polished. A receptionist led us to a conference room, its long oak table surrounded by leather chairs. Clara was already there, sipping water from a crystal glass like she belonged in this world. She rose when she saw me, arms outstretched. Margaret, she said warmly, kissing my cheek. But her eyes betrayed her, flat, watchful, measuring. I hugged her back, whispering so low only she could hear, "You and I will talk soon." She stiffened, just for a second, before plastering her smile back on. Then the lawyer entered. A tall man with steel-gray hair and a pinstripe suit, introducing himself as Mr. Harrison. His voice carried the smooth confidence of someone used to winning. "Mrs. Ellison," he said, shaking my hand firmly, "we're here to discuss arrangements for your future care and security." Future care. The words soured in my stomach. I sat, folding my hands neatly on the table, pretending I was a nervous old woman grateful for guidance. Inside, I memorized every detail. His name, his tone, the folder in his hands stamped with my name in bold letters. "Your son and his wife," Mr. Harrison began, "have expressed concern about your well-being. They believe it's time to establish legal guardianship, to ensure you're looked after properly. This would involve transferring authority for financial and medical decisions to Daniel, so you won't have to worry about complicated matters. It's a very common process for seniors." Every word was a blade. Guardianship. Authority. Transfer. Jessica nodded eagerly, resting a manicured hand on Daniel's arm. Clara leaned forward, her voice dripping honey. "Margaret, darling, this is for your own good. You've worked so hard your whole life. Don't you deserve to rest without burdens? I tilted my head, as if confused, as if their words floated just out of reach. So, this means I wouldn't have to pay bills anymore? I asked, my voice small. Daniel smiled patiently, like a teacher explaining to a child. Exactly, Mom. We'll handle everything. You can relax. I nodded slowly, letting relief spread across my face, though inside I was boiling. And what about my house? Would that be safe too? Jessica spoke up quickly, too quickly. Of course, Margaret. The house would be in our care, but it's still yours in spirit. You wouldn't have to worry about maintenance, taxes, or, well, anything. Spirit. The word clanged in my head like a funeral bell. Mr. Harrison slid a stack of papers across the table. Legal language sprawled across them like a spider's web. I leaned over, pretending to squint, my finger tracing the lines. But I wasn't reading for myself. I was reading for Evelyn, the legal aid lawyer waiting for my call. I already had my recorder tucked in my purse, running quietly. Every word spoken in this room was mine to keep. My proof. Finally, I looked up, feigning uncertainty. This is a lot to take in. Do I need to sign today? Daniel's smile tightened. It's best not to wait, Mom. Jessica and I have already made the arrangements with the nursing home. They're holding a room for you. A chill ripped down my spine. A room. They'd already planned it, signed things behind my back. Clara reached for my hand. We all love you, Margaret. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I let my hand rest in hers, soft and shaking, the perfect mask of surrender. Then I whispered, of course. But I'd like to pray on it tonight. Robert always said never sign anything without sleeping on it. You understand? For the first time, Clara's smile faltered. Jessica's lips pressed into a thin line. Daniel exhaled slowly, masking his irritation. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. That's perfectly fine, Mrs. Ellison. Take your time. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning if you're ready. The meeting ended with hugs I didn't return and reassurances I didn't believe. Back in the car, Jessica whispered sharply to Daniel, thinking I couldn't hear, she's stalling. We can't wait forever. He muttered back, relax. Tomorrow it's done. I kept my gaze fixed on the gray sky outside, hiding the flicker of triumph in my eyes. Tomorrow. They thought they owned me by tomorrow. But tomorrow, they would learn the truth. I wasn't the lamb they thought I was. I was the wolf they had raised. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, the recorder beside me, its little red light still glowing, whispering proof of every lie Daniel and Clara had spun. My notebook lay open, each page filled with dates, names, and words they thought I was too fragile to hear. Tomorrow, they planned to chain me with guardianship papers. But tomorrow, I planned to cut the chains before they even closed. I dialed Evelyn, my legal aid lawyer, her voice crisp even at the late hour. Bring everything, she said firmly. Meet me at the courthouse before you see them again. Trust me, Margaret. We'll make them regret underestimating you. Morning came with rain, hard and unrelenting, washing the streets clean like the heavens were preparing for a reckoning. Daniel picked me up again, his silver sedan splashing through puddles. Jessica sat in the front seat, tapping her nails against the dashboard like a drumbeat of impatience. Clara wasn't with them this time, but I knew she'd be waiting at the firm. I clutched my purse, the recorder hidden inside, my notebook pressed against my ribs like armor. Ready, Mom? Daniel asked casually. Of course, Danny, I said softly. He smiled, thinking I was tamed. But inside, my heart was pounding with fire. Instead of walking into the law office, I asked Daniel to drop me off, just around the corner. He looked puzzled but didn't argue. As soon as they were gone, I hurried to the courthouse steps, the rain soaking my hair. Evelyn was waiting, umbrella in hand, a folder thick with paperwork. We're filing for protective action right now, she explained as we rushed inside. Once it's stamped, your son cannot proceed with guardianship without a hearing, and with your evidence, Margaret, he doesn't stand a chance. My breath caught. Relief, sharp and sweet, filled my lungs. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. By the time I arrived at Harrison and Wolf, papers tucked securely in my purse, I was no longer a trembling widow. I was a mother armed for war. They were already seated when I entered, Daniel, Jessica, and Clara, smiling like executioners awaiting their victim. Mr. Harrison rose politely. Mrs. Ellison, welcome back. Shall we finalize? I sat down, folding my hands neatly on the table. Of course, I said evenly. But before we begin, I brought something of my own. I reached into my purse and placed the recorder on the table. A hush fell. Daniel's face drained of color. Jessica's lips parted. Clara's eyes narrowed. Click. The room filled with their own voices. Jessica, asterisk, when is this happening, Danny? I don't want to wait forever. Asterisk Daniel, asterisk soon. Just a few more weeks. Once the papers are signed, it's done. Asterisk Clara, asterisk don't make this harder than it needs to be. Asterisk the sound echoed against the polished walls, undeniable, unshakable. I watched as their masks cracked, Daniel shifting in his chair, Jessica's hands curling into fists, Clara's jaw tightening. Mr. Harrison looked from them to me, his professional calm faltering. Mrs. Ellison, what is this? I met his eyes, my voice steady. The truth. Daniel leaned forward, his voice desperate. Mom, you don't understand. No, Danny, I cut in, my voice sharp as broken glass. I understand perfectly. I understand that the boy I raised, the boy I gave my life for, sat in a car with his aunt and his wife plotting to strip me of my home, my freedom, my dignity. I understand that you thought I was too blind, too weak, too old to fight back. But you were wrong. Jessica's face twisted, venom in her eyes. We were trying to help you. She spat. Help me. I barked a laugh. By selling my house out from under me? By locking me in a nursing home like a forgotten patient? Clara finally spoke, her voice low, trying to regain control. Margaret, think carefully. You don't want to ruin your relationship with your son. I turned to her, my oldest friend, my traitor. You ruined it, Clara. You ruined 30 years of friendship the moment you called me a burden. I trusted you with my child, my grief, my life, and you sold me out. For what? Jessica's approval? A share of my house. Her cheeks flushed, but she didn't answer. Silence was louder than any denial. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Mrs. Ellison, if you feel coerced, you are under no obligation to sign. In fact, with this recording. His eyes flicked to Daniel, Jessica, and Clara, his voice sharp now. This borders on elder abuse. I cannot, in good conscience, proceed. Jessica slammed her hand on the table. This is ridiculous, she snapped. Daniel tried to soothe her, but his hands were shaking. The power in the room had shifted. For the first time, I wasn't the victim. They were. I rose slowly, slipping the recorder back into my purse. This meeting is over, I said calmly. I've already filed with the court. Guardianship won't be happening. Not today, not ever. And if any of you try to take another step against me, this recording will go straight to the authorities. My eyes locked on Daniel's, holding him still. I raised you better than this. If you want to throw your soul away for money, that's your choice. But you will not take me with you. His mouth opened, then closed, no words coming. The boy who once looked at me like I was his whole world sat silent, defeated. As I walked out into the rain, umbrella unopened, I felt the weight on my shoulders lift. They had underestimated me. They had tried to bury me alive. But I had dug myself out and left them choking on the dirt of their own greed. My shoes splashed through puddles, the storm soaking me to the skin, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt powerful. Yet even as the rain washed my face, one thought lingered like a shadow: battles can be won, but wars are never over. Daniel was my son. And even now, even after everything, a part of me still longed for him to choose me over the darkness he'd fallen into. But if he didn't, then he would learn that a mother's strength is not something you can sign away with papers. The storm passed overnight. By morning, sunlight broke through the blinds, streaking gold across my kitchen table. I sat there with a cup of coffee, steam curling into the air, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. The papers from the courthouse lay neatly stacked in front of me. Guardianship denied. My home safe. My life my own again. I thought victory would feel sweeter, but instead it was heavy, laced with sorrow. I had won against Daniel, Jessica, and Clara. But in doing so, I had lost something far more precious. The illusion that my son still stood on my side. The phone rang mid-morning. I almost didn't answer. But the number flashing on the screen was Daniel's. For a moment, I considered letting it ring out, punishing him with silence. Instead, I pressed accept. Mom. His voice cracked, softer than I'd heard in years. Can I come over? I hesitated, the sting of betrayal still raw. But then I thought of Robert, of the promise we'd once made to always keep the door open for our boy. Yes, Danny, I whispered. Come home. An hour later, he stood at my doorstep, rainwater still clinging to his jacket from the storm. His face looked older, the lines of guilt carved deep. He stepped inside, eyes darting around the house he had nearly stolen. I'm sorry, he said quickly, words tumbling out like stones. Jessica pushed, Clara convinced me. But it was me too. I was weak. I wanted the easy way out. I thought if I had control, life would be simpler. I didn't think about what it would do to you. I let him speak, every word a confession, every pause heavy with shame. When he finished, silence stretched between us. Finally, I said, you didn't just try to take my house, Danny. You tried to take my dignity. Do you understand that? He nodded, tears gathering in his eyes. I do. I was wrong. I don't deserve your forgiveness. My chest tightened, torn between fury and the unbreakable bond of blood. A mother can condemn her son's actions, but can she ever truly condemn her son? Jessica didn't come with him. Instead, later that day, she sent a short text, * we're done. Don't contact me again. * no apology. No regret. Just a severed tie. Daniel sat at my table, staring at the screen, his marriage dissolving before his eyes. Clara, too, vanished like smoke, her phone disconnected, her social media wiped clean. When people show you who they are, you believe them. And I believed them now. Their greed had been their undoing. My justice was watching them lose each other. Evelyn called that afternoon, her voice warm. The judge has signed everything. You're untouchable now, Margaret. They can't lay a finger on you. But more than that, you showed strength most people never find. I thanked her, my throat thick with emotion. She had been my sword in the dark, but the battle had been mine alone. I hung up, looking at Daniel across the table, his hands wrapped around his mug like a lifeline. He looked broken, yes, but maybe, just maybe, also salvageable. That evening, I took him outside to the porch, where Robert and I had spent so many nights watching the sunset. The sky was painted orange and purple, the air smelling fresh from the rain. Do you remember, I asked quietly, when you were 12, and you wanted to run away because I wouldn't buy you that baseball glove? He gave a soft laugh, surprised. Yeah. I packed peanut butter sandwiches and thought I could live in the park. And what did your father say? That if I wanted to go, the door was open. But if I stayed, I had to respect the house. I turned to him, my eyes steady. That rule still stands, Danny. My door is open. But if you want to stay in my life, you have to respect me, not control me. I will not be anyone's burden, and I will not be erased. Tears slid down his cheeks as he nodded. I don't deserve another chance, Mom. But if you'll give me one, I'll spend the rest of my life proving you wrong about me. I placed my hand over his, my heart aching. Don't prove me wrong. Prove yourself right. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a strange peace settle over me. Not everything was healed. Wounds like these don't close overnight. But they can scar into strength. Jessica was gone, Clara was gone, and Daniel, my son, was still here trying. That would have to be enough. And if he faltered again, I was ready. They had tried to write my ending for me, to tuck me away in a corner like a forgotten relic. But I had taken the pen back. My story was mine to write. And so I sat on that porch, watching the first stars blink awake in the darkening sky, whispering a prayer to Robert, *I stood, love. I fought. I didn't let them take me. Somewhere, I hoped he was proud. Tomorrow would bring new battles. Life always does. But tonight, I had one. Not with revenge. Not with bitterness. But with quiet strength. And that, I realized, was the greatest inheritance I could leave behind. My love. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.